Before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed. You won't want to miss the stories that come next. And if this tale pulls you in, share it with someone who loves uncovering the unexpected. Now let's begin. The evening wind rolled in from the Pacific, carrying with it the familiar scent of salt and restless tides. The kind of wind that always made Emily Carter feel as though the world was larger than the life she lived within it. It brushed against her face as she stepped out of the small grocery store, her daughter Lily holding her hand, and for a brief moment Emily closed her eyes, letting the breeze settle her thoughts. It had been another long day double shift, minimum wage, the usual tightness in her chest every time she remembered the bills waiting on the kitchen table. Yet beneath that heaviness, there was something else tonight, something small and electric, as though the universe was nudging her toward a decision she could not yet see clearly. The sun was dipping low, casting the small Oregon town in a burnt orange glow. And as they walked home, Emily felt something like a quiet promise in the air, though she had no idea what it could possibly mean. Lily skipped beside her, humming a tune from school, her ponytail bouncing, her backpack stuffed with drawings of oceans and imaginary pirate ships. She was always drawing ships, sleek ones, battered ones, fantastical ones with sails the size of buildings. Emily often wondered why her daughter was so drawn to the sea. Maybe it was the proximity. Maybe it was the stories Emily had told her when she was younger, about the legends of the coast, the lost vessels, the way the ocean could hide secrets for decades. Those stories had been a comfort when life felt too hard, a way to escape the cramped apartment and the long hours. Lily had soaked them in like sunlight. But tonight something different caught Emily's attention, an old crumpled flyer on the community bulletin board outside the store. It fluttered in the wind, half torn, taped crookedly between ads for babysitting and a yard sale. She almost passed it without looking, but Lily tugged her hand toward it. "Mom, look, there's a boat on it." Emily stopped. A boat? She turned her head, and her breath hitched for a second, because Lily was right. There, in faded ink and grainy resolution, was a picture of what looked like an old yacht. No, not even a yacht anymore. A carcass of a yacht. A ruin. But the line below it was what froze Emily in place. Abandoned yacht for sale, $100. Buyer assumes responsibility for removal. Inquire at the coastal maintenance office. $100. $100 for what looked like a sunken dream, half swallowed by sand and rust. It was absurd, ridiculous, and yet Emily felt that same electric hum in her chest again, faint but unmistakable, like the warning vibration before a distant quake. "Can we see it?" Lily breathed, practically pressing her face to the paper. Her eyes were wide, but not with childish fantasy. There was recognition there, Emily could see it, that same strange pull. Emily forced herself to laugh lightly. "Sweetheart, it's just an old wreck. Probably hasn't floated in decades. But it looks like it used to be pretty," Lily said, still staring. "Like those old ships in your stories." And that was the problem. It did look like something from another time. Something built before the modern glossy yachts that docked at the tourist marina. Its shape was different, sleeker, narrower, older, like a vessel from the early days of private sea travel, when wealthy pioneers wanted luxury at sea for the very first time. Emily tore her gaze away. She had laundry to fold, dinner to scrape together, an early shift tomorrow. She didn't have time for whimsical thoughts about wrecked yachts. But as they continued toward home, she kept glancing back over her shoulder at the fading flyer, and every time she did, the whisper inside her grew louder. Maybe it's something more. By the time they reached their apartment, the sky was deep purple and the street lights were flickering on. The building itself was as tired as Emily felt, peeling paint, narrow halls, a front door that stuck no matter how hard she shoved it. Inside, the air smelled faintly of old carpet and someone cooking something too oily down the hall. Lily dropped her backpack and ran to her room to show Emily her latest drawing. A long, sleek yacht cutting through waves under a starry sky. Emily smiled, but the picture on the flyer still gnawed at her thoughts. After dinner, she sat at the small table, receipts and overdue notices spread out like a depressing deck of cards. She tried to focus on numbers, payments, the never-ending cycle she'd come to accept as normal. but her hand drifted toward her phone. Before she could stop herself, she typed in the number from the flyer. The call barely rang once before an older man answered, sounding bored. His tone said he'd repeated the same explanation 100 times already. Coastal maintenance. You calling about the wreck? Emily hesitated. The yacht, yes. I wanted to ask, why is it only $100? The man snorted. Because it's useless. Hasn't been seaworthy in half a century. City's been trying to get rid of it for years. It washed up on a stretch of land nobody wants to deal with. If someone buys it, it's on them to clean the damn thing off the sand. Waste of money if you ask me. Emily chewed her lip. So it's still there? Can someone look at it? If you want, the man said. It's fenced off, but the gate's open. It's not like anyone else cares about it. You can go tomorrow. Again, the hum inside her chest, stronger now. She hung up and sat back, staring at the table. She should ignore it. She should. She had responsibilities. A child, rent, bills. No time for foolish dreams. No reason to follow the pull of some decayed artifact left to rot on a forgotten beach. But she didn't sleep well that night. She kept imagining the shape of the yacht, its age, the possibility of forgotten stories hidden in its worn frame. And at dawn, while the sky was still pink and the apartment quiet, Emily made her decision, even though she didn't say it aloud. She would see the yacht. The day unfolded with its usual rhythm, but everything felt slightly muted, as though Emily were moving underwater. At work, she wiped counters, took orders, refilled coffee, but her thoughts drifted back to the coast again and again. When she mentioned the yacht to a co-worker during a brief lull, the woman barked a laugh. You? Buying a boat? She scoffed. Girl, you can barely afford gas. That thing's a rusted coffin. Don't throw away what little you've got. Another co-worker chimed in. That ship's been out there since I was a kid, probably full of mold and dead crabs. Unless you want tetanus, stay away. The laughter that followed wasn't cruel, but it stung all the same. It painted her as naive, foolish, someone who always dreamed too big for her little life. Emily smiled weakly, said nothing, and returned to her tasks, but inside something crystallized, sharp and stubborn. They didn't understand. They never did. After school, she picked up Lily, who skipped toward the car with bright eyes. Are we going to see it today? The old boat? Emily almost said no. Almost. But then she saw the hope in her daughter's eyes, the excitement she rarely showed at anything outside her drawings. And something inside Emily softened. Yes, she said, we're going. They drove along the coastal road, the cliffs rising like dark sentinels on one side, the endless ocean stretching on the other. The sound of waves crashing against rock echoed louder as they approached the stretch of beach where the yacht lay stranded. Emily parked near the fence, her heart pounding. She hadn't expected so many cars. A few locals stood around, talking, pointing. Some recognized her and whispered, "That's the woman from the cafe. She's really thinking about buying it? Poor thing must be desperate." The words floated on the breeze, but Emily straightened her shoulders, pretending she didn't hear. She took Lily's hand, and together they walked through the open gate. The sand was cool beneath their shoes, the wind sharp. And then she saw it. The yacht, or what remained of it. Once it must have been beautiful, elegant, maybe even luxurious. Now it lay half sunk into the sand, its hull leaning, its rails broken, its paint long devoured by salt and storms. Wood and metal intertwined like bones. But something about it struck Emily with unexpected force. It was older than she'd thought. The design, the structure, the detailing she could still make out beneath the decay. This was no simple leisure boat. It was a piece of history. Lily's hand tightened in hers. "Mom, it's huge," she whispered. Emily nodded slowly. "Yes, and it must have been magnificent." A small group of teenagers snickered behind them. "Look," one of them called, "there's the lady who wants to buy the ghost ship." More laughter. Emily ignored them. She guided Lily closer, stepping carefully over the sand drifted high against the hull. Every step made the ship seem more real, more frightening, more compelling. Up close, She could see details no picture could convey. The remnants of carved wood edging, the faint trace of a nameplate worn smooth by time, the unusual curve of the hull suggesting craftsmanship rare even in early maritime design. "Do you think it's safe?" Lily asked. "I don't know," Emily admitted. "We'll go slowly." With effort, she found a way up a slanted section of hull wedged against the sand, stable enough to climb. She hoisted Lily first, then followed, her hands gripping metal so corroded it crumbled under her fingertips. When they reached the deck, Emily paused to breathe. The boards under her feet groaned, but held. Through gaps in the deck, she could see the sand below, the dark interior of the ship yawning like an open mouth. "This is like a story," Lily whispered, her voice trembling with awe. "Like one of your stories." Emily looked around, her heart hammering. And for the first time in a long time, she didn't feel tired or defeated. She felt alive. Maybe this was reckless. Maybe it was foolish. But there was something about this forgotten yacht that called to her. Something she couldn't yet name. As she stood on the deck with the wind whipping her hair and the town murmuring behind her, Emily Carter realized that her life had been stuck in the same tide for far too long. And the pull she'd felt since first seeing the flyer was not a coincidence. It was a current dragging her towards something she could not fully understand, but was now powerless to resist. She looked down at her daughter, who gazed around with shining eyes, and she knew the decision had already been made. The only thing left was to follow it. "We're buying it," she said quietly. Lily gasped. "Really?" Emily nodded. "Really?" Behind them, the laughter stopped abruptly. Silence rippled through the onlookers like a sudden shift in the wind. Emily didn't turn to face them. She didn't need their approval. For the first time in years, she was choosing something not out of desperation, not out of obligation, but out of a feeling she trusted more than logic. A feeling that this hull, this ruin, this forgotten relic had a story inside it waiting for her. She couldn't know then how right she was, nor how wrong everyone else would soon discover they'd been. The next morning rose pale and misty, the kind of coastal dawn where the world seems caught between sleep and waking, its edges softened by fog. Emily had barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the slanted deck beneath her feet, the broken railings, the weather-beaten hull, and the lingering sense that the ship had been waiting for her. She didn't know why she felt that so strongly, but it pulsed in her like a second heartbeat. When Lily padded into the kitchen, rubbing her eyes and asking if they could go back to the yacht, Emily didn't even hesitate. They dressed quickly, grabbed a small toolkit from the closet, a rusted hammer, an old flashlight, a pair of work gloves, and headed out the door before the sun had fully broken through the fog. The coastal road was quiet, the early hour marked only by a few trucks and the distant cries of seabirds. Emily drove with her hands tight on the steering wheel, replaying the previous day in her mind. The laughter of the teenagers still echoed in her memory, the dismissive looks from the onlookers. But beneath that, stronger and truer, was the image of Lily's face filled with wonder, and the strange warmth that had filled Emily as they stood on the deck together. It wasn't just a broken yacht. She was sure of that now. It was something else, something she needed to understand. As they approached the fenced-off area, she noticed fewer people than yesterday, though a couple of fishermen lingered near their trucks, sipping coffee and pretending not to watch her. Emily didn't acknowledge them. She parked the pickup, helped Lily out, and together they crossed the sand toward the hulking silhouette, half swallowed by the shore. The fog made it look almost ghostly, a looming shape rising from the dunes, framed against a pale gray sky. It should have looked dead, abandoned. But to Emily it seemed almost alive, as if pressing forward out of the past to meet her. They climbed aboard carefully, the deck creaking beneath their weight. She led Lily to the interior entrance where broken door frames hung crookedly and sunlight filtered through cracked windows and thin beams. Inside, the ship smelled of wet wood, rust, and age. The air had a heaviness to it, a stillness as though it had held its breath for decades. Their footsteps echoed faintly as they stepped deeper into the shadowed corridor. Emily raised her flashlight and swept the beam slowly over the collapsed beams, the peeling walls, the remnants of a life long gone. She expected to see only rot and ruin, but instead she found herself studying the details. Here a carved wooden post, They're a brass hinge, far more ornate than anything modern boats would use. This ship had been crafted with intent and extravagance. Even in decay, it held a certain majesty, like the ruins of a forgotten mansion. Lily stayed close, clutching the hem of her jacket. Her small voice echoed slightly as she spoke. "Mom, what was this room?" Emily paused, shining the light over what remained of benches and a shattered table. She imagined people sitting here once, laughing, dining, enjoying ocean breezes. "It was probably a lounge or dining area," she said softly, "a place where passengers relaxed. This yacht was built before boats looked the way they do now. Back then, everything was custom-made, expensive, personal." Lily ran a hand over a carved panel, tracing the faded design. "It looks like something from a storybook." Emily smiled faintly. "Yes, it does." They moved on, stepping over fallen beams and debris. The deeper they went, the more apparent the decay became. The floor slanted downward, warped by years of storms and shifting tides. In one room, sunlight poured through a gaping hole in the ceiling, illuminating floating dust particles like drifting stars. Everything felt suspended in time. Emily found herself lingering, taking in every detail, as though she were piecing together a story one fragment at a time. They reached an area where the flooring changed subtly. It was barely noticeable unless one was paying very close attention. The wood here was slightly different, not in color. Both were faded to similar muted tones, but in texture. The grain patterns didn't match. The nails, too, were not as corroded as others nearby. Emily crouched, running her fingers lightly over the boards. "This wasn't part of the original build," she murmured. "What does that mean?" Lily asked, leaning beside her. "It means someone fixed this area after the ship was already old," Emily said. "Or they covered something." At that moment, Lily shifted her weight and stepped on one of the boards. A hollow, unmistakable sound echoed beneath it, deep, resonant, empty. They both froze. Lily's eyes widened, and she stepped back quickly, grabbing Emily's arm. "Mom, did you hear that?" Emily nodded slowly, her pulse quickening. She placed her hand on the board again and tapped lightly. The same hollow echo answered her, sending a chill through her chest, not of fear, but of anticipation. "There's something under here," she whispered. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached for the hammer from the bag and gently pried at the edge of the plank. The nail resisted at first, but with a steady pull, it loosened, creaking reluctantly before popping free. Lily held the flashlight for her, the beam wobbling with excitement. One by one, Emily removed the surrounding boards, revealing the dark outline of a recessed compartment beneath the floor. When the last board came free, they saw it clearly, a heavy, rusted iron chest, its lid marked by decades of corrosion. It looked ancient, older even than the ship itself, as if it had been sealed away long before the vessel's final journey. Emily exhaled slowly, hardly believing what she was seeing. Lily whispered, "Is that a treasure chest?" Emily couldn't answer. Her throat tightened, and her heart pounded loudly in her ears. She reached out, fingertips brushing the cold metal of the chest. It was real, solid, immovable, hidden so carefully under replaced boards that whoever concealed it had not expected anyone to find it. "Help me with the flashlight," Emily murmured, and Lily steadied the beam. The lock was rusted through, brittle with age. Emily nudged it with the hammer, and the metal gave way with a soft snap. She hesitated. For a second she feared opening it, feared that it would contain nothing, or worse, something that destroyed the fragile hope she felt building inside her. But she'd come this far. She placed her hands on either side of the lid, grimy and cold, and lifted slowly. The hinges groaned like a sigh long held. Inside, beneath layers of dust and time, something glimmered faintly in the dim light. At first, Emily thought it was a trick of the flashlight, a reflection. But as the light caught again, there was no mistaking it. Gold, coins, dozens of them, perhaps hundreds, cascading in a dull metallic glow that seemed to warm the cold air around them. Mixed among them were small velvet pouches, their fabric brittle, and wooden boxes with tarnished clasps. There were pieces of jewelry tangled together, chains, pendants, rings set with stones that still sparkled despite their age. Lily gasped. Mom, is it real? It looks real. Emily's breath shook as she reached into the chest and lifted one of the coins. It was heavier than she expected. Warmer, the edges worn smooth but with enough detail remaining to make her stomach twist in shock. A crest, a date, script she didn't recognize but could easily guess belonged to a time long past. It's real, she said softly. It's all real. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of what they'd found pressed down on them, immense and unreal. Emily felt a swell of emotion crash through her. Fear, disbelief, elation, confusion, all mixing into something too large to contain. She had expected rust, rot, maybe some scraps of old tools or forgotten objects. Not this. Not a hidden fortune lying in silence beneath her hands. She placed the coin back gently, as though afraid it might crumble. Someone hid this here, she murmured. Someone hid it on purpose. Lily looked down at the chest with wide eyes that reflected both wonder and innocence. Mom, what do we do now? Emily didn't know. Part of her wanted to close the chest, put everything back, pretend she had never opened it. Another part, the part that had driven her here, the part that sensed something waiting for her, felt an overwhelming certainty that their lives had just shifted in a way she couldn't yet comprehend. As she knelt there with her daughter by her side, and the treasure glimmering softly in the half-light of the ruined ship, she felt more alive than she had in years. It wasn't just the gold, it was the discovery, the mystery, the realization that her instincts had not led her wrong, that the universe's quiet nudge had brought her exactly where she was meant to be. But reality soon pressed in. Voices drifted from outside, faint at first, then clearer. Curious onlookers had returned, drawn by the sight of mother and daughter entering the old yacht again. Emily stiffened as their footsteps approached. She wasn't ready to share this. Not yet. Not with anyone. She quickly lowered the lid of the chest, muffling the soft clinks of coins shifting inside. Dust rose in a small cloud as she pushed the planks back over the compartment, hiding it as best she could. We need to go, she whispered. Lily nodded, sensing the urgency. As they stepped back onto the deck, a couple of familiar faces turned toward them. Locals from the town, their expressions curious and amused. One man shouted something about her crazy project, and a few laughs followed. But Emily wasn't listening anymore. Yesterday, those voices had stung. Today, they barely grazed her. Because beneath her feet, hidden from sight, she knew something extraordinary lay waiting. Something that no amount of ridicule could diminish. She helped Lily down from the hull and walked past the small crowd without acknowledging them. The fog had lifted, revealing a brighter sky, and as they crossed the sand, Emily felt the weight of a secret resting silently between her and her daughter. A secret that pulsed like a heartbeat beneath the rotting boards of an ancient ship. They reached the pickup, and Emily opened the door for Lily before climbing in herself. She took one last look at the yacht, rising alone against the morning light. Yesterday it had been a ruin. Today it was a doorway. One she had stepped through without fully understanding the magnitude of what awaited her on the other side. She started the engine, her hands steady now. For the first time in a long time, she felt direction, purpose, the spark of something new and terrifying and wonderful. As they drove away, leaving the ship behind in the distance, Emily knew with absolute certainty that everything in their lives had begun to change the moment she'd seen the flyer. And the change was only just beginning. The drive back home felt unreal to Emily, as though she were floating somewhere between her old life and a new one she hadn't yet learned to comprehend. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles pale, while her mind spun in widening circles around the image of the chest beneath the planks. Even now she could still feel the cold weight of that first gold coin against her palm, could still see the way the dim light inside the ruined yacht had caught on the coin's worn surface and ignited something fierce inside her. She had expected the sight of the yacht a second time to dull her curiosity, to reveal it as nothing more than a rotting shell. Instead, everything inside it had grown sharper and more alive. She could no longer deny it. Something extraordinary waited on that ship. Something that had been hidden for decades, maybe for generations. Something that, by some strange twist of fate, had become her responsibility. Lily, sitting in the passenger seat with her knees tucked up and her small hands clasped together, kept glancing at her. The child had always been perceptive, more than most children her age, and Emily knew her daughter sensed the shift in the air around them. They had uncovered something that would ripple outward and touch everything. Emily wasn't ready to talk about it yet, not until she could fully understand what it meant. For now there was only silence between them, punctuated by the familiar rumble of the truck and the cries of seabirds overhead. When they reached their apartment, they ate a quiet lunch, both pretending to focus on their food. But their minds remained aboard the yacht, trapped in the moment when the ancient hinges had groaned open and revealed the glittering trove inside. Afterward, while Lily retreated to her room to draw something she always did when her emotions were too large to voice, Emily sank onto the couch with her head in her hands, breathing deeply. She had found treasure. Not metaphorical treasure, not the kind uncovered by a metal detector on a beach. Real treasure, gold, jewels, historical artifacts, a fortune hidden away by hands long dead. And now what? She knew she couldn't leave it unattended. The thought made her stomach twist. What if someone else found it? What if one of the teenagers who frequented the beach climbed aboard out of curiosity? What if the tide took the yacht deeper into the sand, or a storm damaged the hull further? What if a random stranger, seeing her on the beach, poked around and stumbled across the loose floorboards? She had to go back. She had to look again. She had to think clearly, make a plan, understand how to keep the discovery safe. But this wasn't just about the treasure. She could feel it. It was about everything that had led her to that point. The years of instability, struggle, sacrifice. The yearning for something better. The unspoken fear that she would never escape the suffocating rotation of low-wage jobs and overdue bills. She had always believed that life wasn't supposed to be this hard, that something had to change, somewhere, somehow. And now she wondered if the universe had finally answered her. Later that afternoon, when the sky shifted into the warmer hues of sunset, she announced softly that they were going back to the beach. Lily's head snapped up instantly. "To the boat?" she asked, her voice trembling with both excitement and anxiety. "Yes," Emily said, "but we're not talking to anyone. We're not showing anyone anything. We just need to check on it." Lily nodded solemnly, as though understanding the weight of secrecy. She ran to get her jacket, and soon they were on the road again, the sky deepening into streaks of orange and lavender. This time the beach was busier. An unusual number of cars lined the parking area, and groups of people milled near the fence, talking in animated tones. Emily's stomach tightened. What were they doing here? Had someone seen something? Had anyone noticed that she had been working inside the hull? Or worse, had someone entered after she left? She parked farther away and instructed Lily to stay close. As they crossed the sand, a few people turned to look at her, whispering behind cupped hands. Emily ignored them, lifting Lily and helping her over the fence before climbing over herself. The yacht loomed in front of them, more ominous now with so many prying eyes nearby. The wind carried scraps of conversations. She's really trying to restore it? Does she think it's worth something? What an insane project. Emily's breath caught. They had no idea how right they were. She climbed aboard again with careful steps, making sure nobody followed. While she moved across the deck with deliberate calm, her heart thundered. She scanned the surface for any sign of disturbance, footprints in the dust, shifted boards, anything to suggest that someone had found the hidden compartment. But everything looked exactly as they had left it. She exhaled shakily, but the relief was fragile, easily shattered by the murmur of voices drifting up from the sand below. She led Lily through the shadowed corridor again, their flashlight slicing through the gloom. When they reached the disguised section of the floor, Emily knelt down and gently tested the planks with her fingertips. Still secure, still hiding the secret within. Good, very good. "Do we open it again?" Lily whispered. Emily hesitated. Part of her wanted to rip the boards away and lift that heavy lid again, to feel that rush of wonder a second time. But another part, stronger, wiser, told her no. Not yet. They had to wait. They had to observe. They had to be patient. "Not right now," Emily murmured. "We just needed to make sure it was safe. We need to figure out what to do next." "Do we tell someone?" Lily asked. Emily shook her head. "Not yet. Maybe not for a while." They sat quietly for a moment, Lily leaning into her side. The dim, dusty interior wrapped around them like a cocoon, isolating them from the world outside. Emily looked around at the wreckage of a ship, long forgotten collapsed beams, rust-eaten pipes, furniture that had once been elegant, now reduced to softened, formless lumps. And beneath it all, unseen but undeniably present, a fortune slept. She felt its weight even now, as though the chest itself were a living heart beating beneath the boards. She rose slowly. "We need to go before people start wondering what we're doing." As they made their way toward the deck, a strange stillness fell over the ship. It was as though the yacht itself was holding its breath, sensing something momentous unfolding. Emily paused at the entrance and glanced back. For a second, she could swear she saw the outline of a name faintly etched into the wood above the doorframe, letters eroded almost to nothing. She squinted, stepping closer, but the fading evening light made it impossible to decipher. Whatever story had once been told on this ship had been swallowed by time. When they climbed down, a small crowd had gathered near the base of the hull. People stared openly now, their curiosity unmasked. A few lifted their phones, recording or taking pictures. Emily fought the urge to shield her daughter behind her. She didn't want Lily exposed to that kind of attention. They pushed through the group, ignoring comments that flew after them. "Think she's going to turn it into a cafe? Maybe she's planning to live in it. Crazy lady's back can't let go of the junk heap, huh?" Emily kept walking, jaw set. Each careless remark only added fuel to the fire building within her. Let them laugh. Let them talk. They would all fall silent soon enough. By the time they returned to the truck, the sun had nearly vanished behind the horizon. Emily took a slow breath before getting inside, steadying herself. The day had been a whirlwind, a discovery, a secret, a shift in the town's attention. She felt the pressure mounting, closing in from all sides. But beneath it all, she also felt that quiet certainty again, the one she couldn't explain. She had made the right choice. She had listened to a whisper that others would have ignored, and the universe had answered with gold and jewels buried beneath rotting planks. Over the next few days, the routine of life wrapped around her like a thin veil, unable to fully mask her inner turmoil. She went to work, packed lunches, washed clothes, helped Lily with homework. But her thoughts always drifted back to the yacht, to the hidden chest, to the treasure that shimmered vividly behind her eyelids each night before sleep claimed her. They returned to the yacht every evening, always after most people had left. Emily checked the planks, the deck, the surroundings. She paid attention to footprints in the sand, to signs of intrusion. Nothing was disturbed. Each night she breathed easier, though she couldn't ignore the growing presence of curious onlookers. The town was watching her now, even if they didn't know why. It made her uneasy. Lily remained quiet but thoughtful. She asked questions about gold, about shipwrecks, about secrets. Emily answered what she could while avoiding the larger implications. She didn't want to scare her daughter, nor did she want to build false expectations. They were walking a delicate line between miracle and madness, and Emily knew one misstep could send everything crashing. It wasn't until the fifth evening, when the beach wind carried a familiar murmur of voices and the silhouettes of more strangers appeared near the hull, that Emily's heart sank in alarm. Too many people. Too much interest. Something needed to change. She couldn't keep the secret hidden forever, not with the yacht becoming a spectacle. That night, after tucking Lily into bed, Emily sat alone at the kitchen table, staring at her cold cup of tea. She knew what chapter was coming next, whether she wanted it or not. The world was closing in, attention was growing, and soon someone else would learn what she and Lily had discovered. It was inevitable. But she also sensed something else. Once the secret emerged from the belly of that ship, nothing about their lives would ever be the same again. And so, on the sixth morning, as the early light spilled across the small apartment, Emily woke with the knowledge that their hidden treasure wouldn't stay hidden much longer. She felt it the way she felt the patterns of the tides and instinctive certainty, the kind that came from living by the ocean all her life. What neither she nor Lily realized was that by midday, the secret would no longer belong solely to them. By the time the sun reached its peak, the whisper of gold inside an abandoned yacht would begin to echo beyond the edges of the beach. And by sunset, every mocking voice in town, the same ones that had laughed at her recklessness, would fall silent. Their discovery was about to be revealed, and nothing could prevent it now. The morning that followed seemed quieter than those before it, though Emily suspected it was only an illusion born from her own restless thoughts. A strange calmness had settled over her, the stillness that comes before something irreversible, like the breathless pause before a storm breaks across the water. She moved through the motions of preparing breakfast, packing Lily's lunch, and tidying the small kitchen with a steadiness that didn't match the unease sitting like a stone in her stomach. Something in the air felt different, heavier. She sensed it in the way the gulls cried outside the window, in the hushed murmur of people passing on the street, in the faint tremor she felt through her fingertips as she tied her shoelaces. It was as if the world were holding its breath, and she, impossibly, was at its center. By the time she and Lily made it to the beach later that morning, the crowd around the yacht had doubled. Cars formed an uneven row along the sand. People stood in knots of conversation, pointing, whispering, some venturing as close to the hull as the safety tape allowed. Emily's heart lurched. She had known attention was coming, but seeing it gather like a rising tide made her pulse quicken. Something had shifted. Something had brought them all here today, more than idle curiosity or the usual coastal gossip. She tightened her grip on Lily's hand as they pushed through the gathering. A few people recognized her and murmured to each other, heads tilting, eyes sharpening with speculation. She tried to ignore them, but each look, each whisper, soaked into her skin like cold rain. They had no idea what she and Lily had glimpsed within that crumbling vessel. They suspected something. But the truth was far more extraordinary than anything they imagined. She guided Lily toward the yacht, helping her climb the familiar slope of sand and debris. The sea breeze whipped through their hair as they reached the deck. Emily could feel eyes burning into her back from below, the weight of a town's curiosity pressing against her spine. She wished she could shudder herself off from the world, but it was impossible now. Too many eyes watched every move she made. They entered the dark corridor once more, the flashlight's pale beam dancing over the ruined interior. Emily's breath steadied only when she reached the hidden compartment. She checked the planks again with trained precision. Still secure, still undiscovered. She exhaled in relief. They had time. Not much, but enough to think, to prepare for what would come next. She knelt there, listening to her heartbeat echo faintly inside the hull, until Lily's soft voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Mom, are we going to tell anyone?" The question was fragile, hesitant. Emily swallowed. The weight of responsibility bore down on her, heavier than the treasure itself. "I don't know yet," she admitted. "This is complicated. We have to be careful. People can get greedy when there's something valuable involved." Lily nodded slowly. Emily brushed a strand of hair from her daughter's forehead. She didn't want Lily frightened, but she needed her to understand the gravity of the situation. Treasure was a gift, yes, but it was also a burden, and they had only just stepped into the first shadow of all that it would bring. They left the yacht as quietly as they had entered, but this time something felt undeniably different. As Emily climbed down, someone called her name. She turned, startled. A figure approached a broad-shouldered man in a worn fishing jacket. His face was lined with age and weather, a beard flecked with gray. From a distance he seemed like just another curious local, but there was something in his expression that stilled her breath. "I heard the yacht's yours now," he said, voice low and rough, like gravel washed by the tide. "Bought it for $100. Emily nodded guardedly. "That's right. You planning to restore it?" he asked, though his tone hinted that he already knew the answer. "I'm not sure yet." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Strange choice. That ship's older than it looks. Might be older than most folks in this town realize." Emily froze. Her heart stuttered. There was something unnerving about the way he said it, not with mockery or sarcasm, but with familiarity, knowledge. He stared at the yacht as though looking at an old ghost. He leaned in slightly. "My father used to talk about a ship like this. Said it was one of the first luxury yachts ever built on the West Coast. Disappeared without a trace. Folks thought it sank. His eyes narrowed. Funny thing seeing it here. She wanted to ask more, but before she could, someone else shouted from across the beach. A cluster of teenagers sprinted toward the hull, laughing and climbing on the sandbank. Emily turned sharply, shielding Lily with her body, as though the mere presence of strangers threatened to expose her secret. "We should go," she whispered. She ushered Lily through the crowd again, ignoring the barrage of questions that people threw toward her. "What are you doing with the boat? Can we look inside? Is it true you found something?" Until they reached the safety of the truck. Emily slammed the door shut, breath shaking. The fisherman's words echoed in her mind long after they left the beach behind. Older than most folks realized, that night sleep eluded her. She lay awake long after Lily had drifted into peaceful dreams, staring at the dark ceiling. Every sound from outside made her flinch. A car passing, a neighbor closing their door, wind brushing the window pane. She felt the treasure pressing on her like a weight, heavy and cold, a force altering the shape of her life in ways she hadn't yet learned to measure. As dawn approached, she realized she needed help. Not to expose the treasure, not yet. No, she needed someone who understood the law. Someone who could tell her what would happen if the truth came to light. Someone who could protect her and Lily if the town's curiosity turned hostile or desperate. The next day, while Lily was at school, Emily made her way to a local law office, a small building crammed between a barbershop and a thrift store. Inside, the air smelled of old paper and stale coffee. A young attorney named Mason Hartwell greeted her with polite confusion, as though he couldn't understand what a woman like her could possibly need legal advice for. Emily sat across from him at his cluttered desk, hands trembling slightly in her lap. She didn't reveal the entire truth, not yet. She told him she had purchased the yacht, that it was older than she expected, and that she suspected there might be historically significant items aboard. She needed to know her rights. She needed to know who could claim ownership. Mason listened carefully, adjusting his glasses. "Well, under state law," he said, "the buyer of an abandoned vessel generally owns everything inside it, assuming the sale was lawful and the previous owners are deceased or have forfeited rights. But if the items are of exceptional historical value, museums or government agencies may intervene, especially if the artifacts date back far enough." Emily's pulse quickened. "What about valuable items? Gold? Jewelry?" He blinked. "Well, technically those would belong to you, but you'd have to report them for tax purposes. And if word gets out..." He hesitated. "People can become difficult." She understood what he wasn't saying. Difficult could mean greedy, aggressive, dangerous. She signed nothing. She promised nothing. She thanked him and walked out with a new understanding. If she didn't handle this carefully, she could lose everything. Not just the treasure, her peace, her safety, her daughter's safety. When she picked up Lily later that afternoon, she found her daughter unusually quiet, her brows drawn as though carrying a secret of her own. Emily knelt beside her. "Is everything okay?" Lily bit her lip. "Some kids at school were saying things. They said you're going to be rich. They said people saw you sneaking around the boat. They said..." She paused, swallowing. "They said someone might try to take it from us." Emily's heart clenched painfully. "Sweetheart, nobody's taking anything from us. I promise." But she wasn't sure she believed her own words. The world was already shifting faster than she could manage. That evening, more people gathered by the shore. News crews arrived. Reporters with bright jackets and microphones walked along the sand, interviewing locals. Emily froze when she saw them, clutching Lily's hand tightly. It was no longer curiosity, it was frenzy. People smelled a story, a mystery, a money trail, and all of it led straight to her. She didn't go near the yacht that night. She stood at a distance, hidden behind a dune, watching the cameras sweep across its battered frame. She imagined them prying inside, uncovering the planks, discovering the chest. She imagined the treasure lifted into harsh lights, broadcast to the world. She imagined strangers knocking on her door, demanding answers, demanding ownership. The thoughts made her sick. They went home in silence. By the next morning, local news headlines were already spreading online. Single mother purchases mysterious yacht for $100. What secrets lie inside the abandoned vessel? And the most worrying one, town suspects' hidden fortune on historic shipwreck. The last article made Emily tremble. Someone knew, or thought they knew, and that was enough to endanger everything. She spent the entire day planning, pacing, thinking, searching for a solution. She called the coastal maintenance office again, but they had no answers for her questions about security or preservation. She called Mason, the young attorney, who advised her to document everything and prepare for potential legal disputes. But her most important concern was Lily. Her daughter was at the center of all of this now, caught in a whirlwind she never asked for. Emily needed to remove her from danger, to shield her from the greed and chaos growing around them. And so after dinner, Emily sat across from Lily at the kitchen table and spoke with more seriousness than she had ever used before. She told her they might have to move temporarily. They might have to step away from town, from the beach, from the yacht, until they figured out what to do. Lily listened, frightened but trusting. Emily could see the conflict in her daughter's eyes, a longing to stay with their discovery, mixed with the fear of what might happen next. They hugged for a long time, both trembling. Emily didn't sleep at all that night. She stared at the ceiling until the darkness softened into morning gray, her mind replaying every choice that had led her here. Buying the yacht had been a leap of faith. Discovering the treasure had been destiny. But everything after that, every whisper, every stare, every headline, felt like a mounting wave ready to crash over her head. And then, as sunlight crept through the curtains, she rose with a clarity that felt carved from stone. She knew what she had to do. She packed her bag. She woke Lily and told her to get dressed. She made a thermos of coffee, grabbed keys, and drove toward the beach. The crowd was already forming. News vans, reporters, locals. But Emily didn't head toward the chaos. She parked farther away, guided Lily down a quieter path, and approached the yacht from behind the dunes. They climbed aboard one last time, hearts pounding, and Emily pried up the planks. The chest was still there, waiting, untouched. She lifted the lid and stared at the gleaming treasure inside the gold, the jewels, the ancient maps. It seemed to glow in the early sunlight, an impossible sight hidden within the decayed bones of a forgotten ship. Lily stood beside her, breathing quietly. Emily rested a trembling hand on the edge of the chest. This treasure had changed everything. It had woken the town. It had awakened danger, but it had also awakened something inside her. Courage, purpose, determination. She wasn't going to let anyone take that from her. She closed the lid gently and covered it again. Then she took Lily's hand. "We're leaving," she whispered. "Not forever, but for now. We'll come back when it's safe, when we're ready." Lily nodded, tears shining in her eyes. They stepped off the yacht together, unnoticed for the moment, slipping away from the growing spectacle on the beach. Emily kept her chin up, her stride firm, her heart pounding with fear and conviction. As they disappeared into the rising sunlight, she knew they were walking away not from the treasure, but toward the life it would one day give them, a life she would protect with everything she had. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more. Share this video with someone who loves mysterious tales, and check out the next episodes on the channel. Your support helps these stories come to life.